What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets post-game show right here on the channels. And I don't know what the hell that intro was. I apologize for that. It was a little weird, but we didn't have an intro yet for our post-game show because of spring training. But unfortunately, the New York Mets lost today. Again, the score doesn't really matter, but we were looking at a couple of pitches that you'll see on your screen right now that we're definitely going to be looking into, especially with the injury that we just heard of that we'll get into it a little bit. Mets lose 7-4, and we'll see how it goes with the injuries and all that other stuff. Chris, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Not really great news to start the day off in terms of Sean Manaea. I'm sure we'll get into it. The final score here clearly doesn't matter. We were watching out for a couple of different things. I had my eye closely on Blade Tidwell. Unfortunately, I didn't get the stream, so I had to listen to the whole game.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you were able to watch it or not. I wasn't actually able to watch it, so I was following along with, Howie Rose on the radio. But listen, man, Blade Tidwell, he looked like he had some good stuff in terms of the velo that was working for him, but he gets dinged up with the 3-run home run. A couple good swings, especially from Pete Alonso going the opposite field, and we can talk about that as well. But we'll get into what you see on the screen. We appreciate you all tuning into the post game stream here as well on both of our channels. A lot to dive into, a lot to assess, both with this game and outside the game with some of the, you know, eh, concerning news that we've received. So we'll try to make best with what we got here.
Yeah. So before the game, or a couple hours before the game, an Anthony DeComo bomb comes out of nowhere. That Shomanaya has a right oblique strain, and you're like, these guys haven't even pitched in spring training, and these guys are hurt. Like this doesn't happen very quickly. Like I feel like the Mets knew about Montas, knew about Manaea, and at some point, everybody would have been questioning, hey, why isn't Manaea pitching in spring training? So I guess the Mets were like, all right, let's just do it now. Chris, 3 games, if you want to call the split squad game, 3 games, well, 4 games, four games, and we're already down 2 pitches in the starting rotation. And I don't know if you saw, I think it was Anthony DeComo also tweeted not too long ago that obviously the choices to replace these two guys is McGill, Cannon, and Blackburn. I think the 6-man rotation is almost out of the question. They're not even thinking about that right now. If that's the case, the plans could put not even a week into spring training. So look, that I said it how many times already? One more injury, you have to panic a little bit. I know this is Shomania. They're saying that it's not a long-term injury, but obliques in an oblique, right? We've seen guys that should be back in less than a month, and it takes longer. Like this isn't a situation where it doesn't have to do with surgery. There'll be therapy, physical therapy and massages and all that stuff to try to get him go. But this is just rest, and there's no guarantee that when he throws a pitch, when he feels healthy, he's going to be okay. So this is a situation here that we might have 2 of our 5 starting pitchers on the shelf for at least a month, or at least Shomania for a month. So, I'm already pissed off about this rotation. I think this is another big blow. Uh, you know, hopefully nobody else gets hurt because we'll be having Griffin Cannon starting opening day. So, what are your thoughts on the Shomania thing when you heard that? I know a lot of us were like, here we go again. But, we were very lucky last year, Chris, with health when it came to the rotation for the most part. Besides Senga, Severino and Manaea, they were healthy. But I wanted to ask you before, you give your opinion here. Do you think that changing his complete mechanics had something to do with this? Because in my opinion, when you've thrown a certain way your whole life and then you completely change your mechanics, right? Your body lags behind on, hey, what the hell are you doing? We've all done stuff that your body's not used to doing. You're like, whoa, what the hell was that? Do you think it has something to do with that when it comes to Manaea?
I don't necessarily believe that it does because he fixed this mechanical issue or made this adjustment per se pretty early into last season. I believe it was around May time that he actually did it. And I actually did a breakdown when I saw the difference before it was actually publicized. And I was like, hold on, something looks a little strange and different with his delivery. So I feel like if it was the actual delivery and mechanical adjustment that contributed to this, we would have seen it earlier, especially with the amount of innings that he threw compared to what he's done over the past couple of seasons in his career. I feel like we would have, heard about that, and he would have been on the shelf a little bit earlier than this spring training. But what actually surprised me in terms of this actual injury, right, and the news that's come out since then about it, is that this is something that he actually felt, one of the first few times throwing in spring training, I believe, before games even started, right?
Yeah,
Whether it was in the bullpen or live batting practice, etc. And to me, it seems like he was almost trying to push through it, thinking that it was going to get better. The pain wasn't excruciating, he said. So he thinks that maybe it was some sort of just like minor tweak and it would have got better within, a day or two. And it just didn't. It's like lingering on. And that's concern. It's good news and bad news at the same time because again, he's going to have to be shut down completely now for a certain period of time, not even being able to throw for that muscle to completely heal.
yeah,
I don't think it's a mechanical thing in terms of what contributed to this injury, right? But again, I'm like sitting here just wondering, if you knew you felt something, did he say anything to the medical staff? Did he not? And why did he wait at this point till this point to try to get it figured out? I don't know. Not that it would have made a difference in terms of like the last few days versus now, but just the timeline of this all, he did not feel this coming into spring training. So this wasn't a lingering issue from the off season. This was when he actually first started throwing in spring training, is what we know from what I've seen in all the reports. So
yeah,
unusual and pretty bad timing for the New York Mets, right? In terms of the roster outlook of it all. And when we talk about, because again, I knew that this injury was going to overtake what we saw today in the game, right? It was natural. Sean Manaea goes down. There's two rotation spots that are now open. Are they going to go to the six man still? Are they not? If you go to the six man, Blackburn, McGill, and Canning are going to be your 4, 5, 6 at this point, with both Montas and Manaea on the shelf to start the season. And so, it's not like we're looking at long-term injuries 3 to 4 months out for either Montas and Manaea, and that's the good news. So, if you need these spot starts from some of these guys, that's okay, but why do that instead of going out to get a veteran at this point in Jose Quintana? I'm not going to sit here and be the Monday, quarterback and look back at all the different options the Mets could have had in terms of free agents and trades this offseason to mitigate this point. I'm not going to do that. What we rolled into spring training is what we rolled into spring training with. But looking at the realistic options still available, you can never have too many arms during the course of 162. Being a Mets fan, right, for our entire lives, I think that's more evident than ever, especially over the past couple of years with DeGrom, Scherzer, Senga, now Montas and Manaea. So I'm looking at Jose Quintana just sitting there on the open market. I know that there was an unwillingness after the Montas injury to entertain that from the Mets front office. I'm curious if that changes now with 2 of your 6 projected starting pitchers going to be starting the season on the IL. Rob, it has to. There's no chance that I'm entrusting Griffin Canning with a consistent rotation spot for the first month or 2 months of the season. Again, he was brought in here on a major league deal north of $4 million as a spot starter and potential long reliever. I believe that's what his role was and was when he signed in terms of what the Mets front office was going to, delegate out to him. But making consistent rotation starts from Griffin Canning with what he's produced over the past couple of years of his career is just simply unacceptable. Go get Jose Quintana. He's not going to be, the answer, the end all be all answer for this rotation, but he's going to help eat up innings when these guys are still recovering and going through that rehab process.
yeah. It's David Stearns. It comes with them. They weren't willing to give $10 million to, or 11, $12 million to Jose Quintana. I all of a sudden they're going to do it. It would look totally like a desperate move. And you know what? It should be a desperate move. This is not, again. Now you're another injury away from this being a complete and utter holy shit, we're in trouble. Like now, it should start in panic mode right now because again, you're already worried about innings with 3 guys that are in your rotation already. Like that are already legitimately in your rotation in Senga, Clay Holmes, and David Peterson, right? Even if you don't think the mechanics were an issue with Sean Manaea, it's the most amount of innings he pitched in a long time. He changed his mechanics, and this is what happens to guys that haven't done that in a while, if at all. And also on top of that, he changed his mechanics. So why are we shocked? Like the whole short-term deal nonsense and worried about injuries and down the road injuries. How about worrying about present injuries, right? Because short-term deal doesn't fix the fact that these guys can also get injured. This is the logic that David Stearns is talking about when it comes to long-term deals with pitchers, right? I'm not saying you go Corbin Burns and he doesn't hurt his arm or have a right oblique strain, or Max Fried for that matter, or trading for one of the a top line starter. But when you don't have a top line starter and these guys go down, it's an issue. It really is. I still feel like right, Corbin Burns is a bulldog, right? Max Fried had injury concerns, but for the most part, he's been healthy, right? Other guys that we've been looking to trade for have been predominantly healthy, have been very good. I just feel like these short-term deals, it's like we were immune to these injuries because of a short-term deal, or it doesn't matter because it's a short-term deal. Yet it's the same logic. Like, I don't care about year 5 through 7 when you can have great years 1 through 4. I know the injuries can happen to anybody, but you are setting yourself up for a disaster, right? I think I said this before on the hot stove. He's trying to get too cute with this rotation. He really is, because it worked for 1 year, right? The pitching lab is the best thing since sliced bread, and we're supposed to, live and die by that. And I think it's a bad way to go about your plan, because a hurt rotation and a rotation in limbo isn't a way to win 90 plus games and try to make the playoffs. I just feel like, we're really already into our depth, right? Paul Blackburn is your number 4 starter now. Tyler McGill is your number 5. If you're doing 6-man rotation, which I don't think they are anymore, because now you don't really have depth, you're going with a 6-man rotation on a regular basis. Who is your 7th starter, right? Tidwell clearly doesn't look like he's ready. We know Brandon Sproat's not ready, because why weren't they talking about him? Right? I don't even think they're talking about him at this point.
No, they're
Right?
not. I mean, he's
They're
not an
not.
option.
Exactly. So it's like, what are we doing here? Where else are we going? Are we going to take Jose Buta from the bullpen now? And
I was going to
lean on-
suggest that. I was going to suggest that.
but that's the problem. This is the problem. You're taking from a strength that a guy that was supposed to be a multi-inning guy, that you really going to trust as a multi-inning guy in your bullpen. You're taking him out for who? For another guy that's worse than him that can maybe throw a couple of innings. I just the plan does not work for me, Chris. It really doesn't. It's a
I
bad plan,
agree.
honestly.
I mean, again, we were all lobbying for that top line starter in the season, and we didn't get it, right? I mean, I was talking about Max Fried before he signed with the Yankees. I mean, we were both talking about the outside chance of Corbin Burns, but for me, like, it's February 24th. The plan was this clearly all along from David Stearns. There's nothing we can really do about it. So I know we've been saying it 100 million times on both of our channels, but this is the route that the Mets went. And for me, now the way that I'm going to just like assess this team moving forward is that what can the Mets do from here? And I think the clear, easy, and I hate to say it, and I hate to say the Mets really need to make a reactionary move, because I never say that. You'll never hear me, unless it gets to this point right now with the rotation. I usually never say that they need to make a reactionary move. But with the back end of this rotation looking the way that it is, with Jose Quintana being out there for the taking on a short-term, 1-year deal, max 1-year deal worth $6 to $8 million, at this point, you need to eat up innings and just kill time before Montas and Manaea get back. And I'm sorry, I'm not willing to kill that time with Griffin Canning. So I understand the whole situation all off season, all of our hot stoves that we've been talking about. They could have done this, they could have done that. What can David Stearns do now to mitigate this back into the rotation so we don't have to see Griffin Canning every fifth or sixth day? So we don't have to see, again, a Tyler McGill every fifth or sixth day, because we've gone down that route already. And it hasn't worked by and large with Tyler McGill. So do something different and go out there and make a move for Jose Quintana, who can help this rotation clearly. I think we're both in line, right? I mean, Rob, forgive me if I'm wrong, but in your videos, you said at this point, right, given everything that's already gone on this offseason, given the plan that we've clearly been showed by this front office, whether you agree with it or whether you don't, Jose Quintana makes sense at this point, right? Given the injuries.
Yeah, but I don't see Stearns being a guy to make a reactionary decision. That's the
Right,
problem. This is the
right,
problem.
right.
He's too status quo. Like I don't care what he did in Milwaukee, right? Because anybody can say whatever he wanted, what he did in Milwaukee. He always had an ace when he was in Milwaukee. He had Woodruff, he had Burns, he had Peralta for a little while. So he never had to go to a six-man rotation. You know why? Because you had a top line starter. You basically had two top two starters in your rotation. He never had to worry about that. And that's the thing that people seem to forget. And that's where I'm not saying that it's wrong to have, multiple guys or even get given long-term deals to pitchers, but it just sets you up that you need to, his plan is directed and put together with 100% health, because you can't go to a six-man rotation and tell me that the sixth man is any good, because he isn't, right? I talked about Tyler McGill. As soon as they said six-man rotation, it made no sense not to go after a top-line starting pitcher, because you're playing with fire, right? Why not push everybody back with a top-line starter, right? I'm not saying give 7 or 8 years to Max Fried or Corbin Burns, but there's guys out there you could have traded for and you still don't do it. Again, this is the logic here, and this is why I don't like it. Because of the fact that you already have a questionable rotation as it is. You need everything to go right for things to work out, not just health, just in general, right? You need bounce back seasons. You need a season similar to what they did last year, some of these guys. It's a lot of what ifs. Oh, if this happens, if that happens, you're playing with fire here. You're putting more pressure now on your bullpen. You're putting more pressure on your offense, which I think the offense can handle it. But again, now you're going to have to, because again, you're using Tyler McGill, who in his career has not stayed healthy. Griffin Cannon had injury concerns and never been really good. Paul Blackburn was injured last year. I know it was a freak way of getting injured, but he was also injured. So you're putting 3 guys in this rotation, or at least 2, possibly 3 if you're going 6-man, that one hasn't stayed healthy, 2 are not that good. And now you're relying on Kodai Senga to stay healthy and pitch well. David Peterson to pitch at least adequately, if not above average, and staying healthy after he pitched a lot of innings last year coming after hip surgery. And then we have who? Clay Holmes, Mr. Great Stuff, but who knows if he can pitch 140 plus innings and still actually pitch well. It was a plan that I knew was going to fail, regardless if it was health or looking what we can see going into the future over the next month or two. Because like, what are they going to do? Not throw any of our starting pitchers just to make sure they stay healthy for opening day? They got to stretch out their arms. I just don't get the logic here. The 6-man.
So what do we do now, Rob? What do we do now?
What do we
Above
do
this
now?
all, what do we do now?
What I would do, I would trade for a starting pitcher. That's what I would do.
Okay,
And
who?
did go get Dylan Cease. Like we're acting like he's not available. He's available. He's not willing to give up what it takes. Then what are we doing here? You just said it, right? It's got to be reactionary at this point. Jose Quintana would help, but it's not going to solve the major issues that this rotation is going to have, right? You already lost 2 pitchers that were guaranteed spots in your rotation. And if you are trying to go to a 6-man rotation, so I guess we don't care about Kodai Senga anymore because we have to go to a 5-man rotation because of circumstance. You see, that's why it's stupid. We played this game with Kodai Senga to try to keep him healthy and protect his innings. And now we're in a situation where we might not be able to do that. Go get reactionary. Go get Dylan Cease, right? It is what it is. What do you got to do? Oh my God, you got to give up Acuna. He's not going to be an MVP. All right, let's be real about this, guys. He might be a very good player, but he's not going to be his brother. We all know that, right? Maybe he will be, but who cares? Like, what does this team need? Right? We talked about these core guys that we have, that besides Juan Soto, you have Alonso, you have Nimmo, you have Lindor. You got 2 or 3 years where they're in their prime. You got to take advantage of it, right? I don't want a 35-year-old, 36-year-old Brandon Nimmo and Francisco Lindor, and then you're going to tell me, oh, Brandon Spoke's finally an ace. Like, it's just silly to me. The fact of the matter is, this should have been, you had options, way too many options, and you went basically everything after Manaea was plan C routes, was the tier C. And it's just silly. And Stearns doesn't make reactionary decisions. And that's the unfortunate part. Sometimes you have to be a little bit desperate here. It's February 24th. You played 4 games in spring training. Both of these guys didn't even throw a pitch in a spring training game, and they're both down for at least a month in Manaea's case. I don't know, man. I don't see Stearns doing anything except internal options, to be quite honest with you.
I will say I think that at some point Stearns will make a band-aid move because his hand is going to be forced, whether that's like Sanders is saying in the chat, Quintana, or if you have to go ahead and sign Spencer Turnbull and then you just go ahead and put Jose Buto in the rotation, that's going to be a band-aid type of move. And at this point, again, I mean, I've made plenty of Dylan Cease, trade packages, videos, so have you. But at this point of the season, I have to just ask myself what's realistic and what's the expectation out of David Stearns. And I still don't think it's going to be a trade for anybody, to be honest with you. Let alone giving up, 2, 3, top 10, top 15 prospects, etc. If that's the situation, if that's what he wants to do, I think it's going to come more so at the deadline. And again, we're going to assess how the first half goes, which I think the offense and the bullpen can handle it. To be honest with you, I've always been in the camp of, and I'm not trying to use this as an excuse now, but like this is like a viable answer. You know this. When I've been talking about Jose Buto, I've always believed in him as a starting rotation guy anyways, because he's shown us that he can do it. Yeah, he had a little bit of better numbers in the second half as a reliever last season, 100%. But if you need this Band-Aid move and you're still selling us on this internal, option stuff, you got to put Buto in that rotation. I do not need to see Griffin Canning in the rotation. That's my only stipulation. But I agree with you.
But
Listen,
Griffin Cannon's going to be in the bullpen then. He's going to be alone.
Correct. Correct. And I don't want to see Griffin Canning starting. He can be the long man. He can stay there, and Buto can move to the rotation. That's 100% a better option than vice versa in my mind. 100%.
Sure.
And then you could just go out there. Listen, David Robertson's still available. Spencer Turnbull, like I just said, he had what, a 2.65 ERA last year, something like that. I think that's what it was. Anyways, he's a viable option in the bullpen too. So there's bullpen options out there available. You don't really need to sign a rotation arm as a reactionary Band-Aid move, but there is that one shining player out there in Jose Quintana for you to go ahead and do so. So they can either add to the bullpen or they can add to the rotation as this quote unquote reactionary move. Now, I don't know. Internal options, we already talked about it. Paul Blackburn, we'll see if he's ready. I think he's going to be available and ready come opening day. We'll see. You talked about Max Kranick. Blade Tidwell's not ready. We just saw that. He's got good stuff, but he just simply has not figured it out and needs to go back down to AAA. Sproat's not going to be ready. Everybody wants to, talk about Brandon Sproat, bring him up. Like, that would be, I'd rather, honestly, at this point, this might sound crazy. I'd rather just start the season off. I don't want to see any of Griffin Canning or Tyler McGill. I'd rather see them come opening day on this roster in the rotation than Brandon Sproat, because there's no chance that Brandon Sproat is going to be ready to be tossed into the fire like that come opening day and succeed. And at that point, what's going to happen if you go ahead and do that, right? If you go ahead and do that and he struggles in his first couple of starts, he loses all his confidence, goes back to the minor leagues, and starts from square one. Why would you do that? That makes no sense. So again, we talk about strong starts, come opening day into April. I think it's important to have a very strong start, but and again, I need to be careful, when I say this, but like if the Mets don't have the strongest of starts in April, is it the end of the world? No, it's not the end of the world.
Well, we are
You don't want that to carry over.
Sure.
You don't want that to carry over.
But here's the thing, right? If you do, it's not the end of the world, absolutely. But you also will have an issue of like, what if that magic don't happen like it did last year, and you fight back. Like, because again, we're talking about the Braves and Philly, right? The Braves are going. I don't think the Braves and Phillies are going to be as good as everybody thinks they are, but we're all going to be in the mix in the East, right? All three of us, the Phillies, the Braves, and the Mets, right? But if the Braves and Phillies are going to be healthy, and we know the Phillies pitching staff is damn good, we know the Braves are still legit with their offense. The fact is that we don't need to be behind them that much, because you got other teams like the Cubs who might be very good. The Brewers won the division. I mean, maybe they still will, but the Central is going to beat up on each other. Like, there's going to be teams, especially in the NL West, right? There could be 3 or 4 teams that can be fighting for a wild card as well, not just the division. Obviously, the Dodgers probably win that, but we're fighting with more teams that might be a little bit better than they were last year. So, we might not win those games, and we might not have an opportunity where the Diamondbacks fall on their faces, because we all forget, as much as the Mets played so well, if the Diamondbacks didn't fall on their faces, we would have never been talking about Pete Alonso's home run in the wild card series, because we would have never made it. I think that we need a fast start, in my opinion. I don't think we can go through April and half of May and struggle and then fight our way back, because we saw how it ends. Everybody's extremely tired because they fought back the entire season. I think it's a recipe for disaster. It would be nice, like I said, just because we don't have pitching right now, that is not looking great, doesn't mean we can't win ball games. We definitely can.
Exactly.
Right? We definitely can.
Exactly.
Right? You can win with your offense, right? We've seen the Dodgers do that for a while. Let's be honest, we've seen the Braves do that for a while when their pitchers were down. They can do that. The Braves started to struggle once Acuna went down, once their guys started to get hurt on the offensive side. So I think you can survive with the offense that the Mets could possibly have, and the bullpen could salvage the problems at least for the first month. I don't think much further, because you can't burn your bullpen out in the first
Well,
month or two, because then you're gonna have problems.
and that's exactly what I was trying to say too, right? I'm not insinuating the Mets lose ball games in April because they don't have the starting pitching. What I was trying to just, formulate is that the offense can definitely win you some ball games, and the bullpen could pick up that slack. But again, you're going to be facing a burnout come May, mid-May, etc., maybe even into June if you're lucky. If those starting pitchers and Montas and Manaea don't come back strong, or even make the timetable of what their injury, timeline stipulates. So, I 100% agree with you. I mean, it's going down a slippery slope at this point. And I've always been kind of, not really worried about this rotation, but that was on the basis of health, right? Like, that was on the basis of health, like what you're saying David Stern's plan was. And, again, how this season plays out still remains to be seen, but David Stearns made it work last year. Is he going to make it work again this year? And that's another thing. Like, when you go into next off season, when more free agents come on the board, if this blows up in the Mets' face, this way to build a rotation, if it blows up in the Mets' face, given this great lineup, does the philosophy change at that point? And that's something that we're going to have to assess clearly next off season. That's a next off season discussion. But, again, this is something where I think that if you don't really want to completely rely on your bullpen and offense to win you games in April while throwing McGill and Canning out there, you can go ahead and at least rely on Quintana. It doesn't have to be for the whole season, right? Quintana can be a DFA come June, July time. But at this point, the money that you spend on that contract will be worth it in terms of the innings eating that you get out of him in the first half, rather than a guy like Griffin Canning, who's posted what is his career ERA? What is his ERA over the past couple of seasons? This stuff really isn't there either, to be honest with you. I know that we like to label these guys high upside. I see a lot of high upside signings from Stearns. I never really thought that Griffin Canning was that quote unquote upside signing. So I don't know. Again, if you listen to the way that I'm speaking about this team right now, the only stipulation that I have is that I do not want Griffin Canning in this rotation come opening day. I do not want him to be in this 6-man or 5-man rotation when that roster comes out. That's the only stipulation I have.
Well, I hope you get your wish, because Quintana could help. But yeah, what Britton said here, what was Stern's plan? I still can't figure that out. Well, I was trying to wonder that for a while, right? I understand the short term deal thing, but he when he based that on was injury concerns on long term deals. when they had the Q&A with him and everything like that, especially in the winter meetings, he talked about that. He goes, I don't think it's completely financially or it ain't a perfect scenario to have long-term deals for pitchers because of those injury concerns. But the way he made it sound like short-term deals like they're immune to these short-term with these injuries because they're a short-term deal. Like, oh, we don't have to pay year 5, 6, or 7 if of injury. But at the same time, you're the only way to get short-term deals or give short-term deals. It's not usually the pitchers that are top-line starters, right? We know the Sean Manaea situation was kind of almost given. Like, it wasn't very hard to negotiate with Sean Manaea. He probably took a less year because I think he could have got a 4th year from somewhere and probably a little bit more money, but he wanted to come back to the Mets. So I'm not giving Stearns a ton of credit for that. We know Juan Soto was all Steve Cohen, and Montas was clearly a Stearns move. We know that. Griffin Cannon was obviously a Stearns move. But again, when you're wheeling and dealing on the tier C side of pitchers in the rotation, it just it doesn't add up to me. I feel like the plan was just all over the place. I didn't think that the Corbin Burnes. I thought he had a more understanding of Corbin Burnes because he was the GM when he was a starter there. But we know the
You
whole thing
can't
with all.
fix you can't fix where he wants to go back to his home. You know what I
Sure,
mean?
sure, I understand that. But but again, there was other guys out there that was pretty good, right? We were talking about Walker Buehler. We think that could have been really good. And I'm not saying these guys can't get hurt. I just feel like when you have average to slightly above average starters at the top of your rotation, and you're hoping for health as well to go with this plan. If you don't have health, it's already a dangerous game. And then the depth that you basically patted yourself on the back because that's what Stearns did. He loves his depth, right? That's why I think you're going to see Griffin Cannon. I think you're going to see Tyler McGill. I think you're going to see Paul Blackburn, obviously, but you're probably going to see these 3 guys. I think they're going to give it a month. What if Sean Manaea has a setback, right? What if Montas, who probably won't be back until late mid-June, right? What if there's a setback, right? You know how I like how the Como put it, like it was he put it in quotes. It's not a major concern. Like, it's a right oblique strain. The guy's a pitcher. it's a strain. It's a problem. He's a pitcher. He's not a shortstop. He's not a first baseman, right? He's throwing to 85 to 100 pitches. Like, this is going to take time. This is an injury with rest. And hope when he throws that one ball, he doesn't feel it. Because what was he doing in the offseason? Right? I mean, he was probably throwing a little bit and resting mostly. So this just didn't come out of nowhere, right? And that's the thing that you always worry about with guys who did not pitch a lot
He
of
did
innings.
say that it came out of nowhere, though, Rob. He did say that it happened after spring training started, not before spring training.
So what was he doing? Like what were we signing too
Well,
many autographs? Like, see,
I mean, like, I
but
think it's a slippery slope if we're trying to assess that this injury actually happened before spring training,
I
to
think
be
a,
honest.
a lot had to do with last year and the innings he threw and the new mechanics. Because that
Mm,
stuff takes time. I think it's more the innings. Let me not throw the mechanics under the bus. I think it was the innings because we see this all the time in baseball. A guy that hasn't thrown a lot of innings in his career at all or in a while, the following year it catches up to you. And I'm not saying this oblique strain is that, but it always seems like that is the case. Where hopefully it's not, and it's just a random thing. But I feel like it's too much of a coincidence. And again, I understand that it's February 24th. A lot of things can happen from then, but I don't know. And easy, I'm not reaching. The fact of the matter is, he had a right oblique strain. Like, he's throwing a little bit in the bullpen, and maybe he threw a live BP. And by the way, did he throw a live BP? Because we haven't seen him do that, right? There haven't been no like videos of
he
him doing
did,
that.
Rob.
He
He
did throw
did.
one. He did throw
He
one,
did.
right?
Because Jose Siri homered off of him.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. I remember that. Okay, you're right. You're right. But I don't know,
So
man.
he was out there. So I'm saying he was out there throwing. He started spring training. Then he felt the injury. And so that's probably why they're telling us that it's not the gravity of the situation is not quote unquote long term or serious because he tried to keep throwing as soon as he felt that. That's what, like, that was the red flag to me. As soon as you felt something, you're supposed to immediately stop. And so it seemed like he was continuing to throw with the hopes that it was going to get better, but it didn't. And he said it was still lingering on. And that's when he decided to stop throwing and make this, shutdown happen, etc. So that timeline doesn't make sense to me. But again, this is not a Joel. He did not say this happened for weeks at this point. Show me where he said that. He literally sat down in a press conference today and talked about the injury and said that he did not feel this before spring training. This happened during spring training, and that's that. Like, and then it was lingering. He was hoping that was going to get better. Let me pull up, since people don't want to do the actual research themselves. Let me find this, Rob. You go ahead and let me actually talk about what Sean Manaea actually said from his mouth to everybody's ears, because apparently he's been, feeling this for weeks, which I just don't buy.
So yeah, so again, like with the situation with Manaea, and there's basically, if you're going with a 5-man rotation, it's going to be two of the three, the Blackburns, the McGills, or the Griffin Cannons. If you go into a 6-man rotation, all three of them are going to have a spot in the rotation. And if Chris was talking about Jose Buto, if they decide to do that and they don't like Griffin Cannon enough to put him in the rotation and they put Buto in the rotation, Yoasker Brazaban is an option to throw in that rotation. That bullpen to fill Jose Buto's spot, because he looked good today. We know how good his stuff is, right? He can be very wild, but he has nasty stuff. When he controls his pitches, you've seen it today. When he controls his pitches and he's in the strike zone, he's very hard to hit. He has a heavy ball. 2 strikeouts today, 1 inning, no walks, no hits, no earned runs. It was a nice performance. Again, I'm not going crazy here, but he is an option. He is a Stearns guy. Stearns brought him in the trade last year. Thought he would help the bullpen, and well, he didn't. But he is a guy that has really good stuff. Stearns likes him. He could be an option if you want Jose Buto to be in this rotation. If that's an option now, Brazaban could be one of those guys, but we'll see.
All
Did you
right, you
find it?
ready?
Yep, good.
I did find it. He literally said it was just on SNY TV on X. Sean Manaea says he started to feel the pain right when he got here, and he didn't feel the injury prior to camp. So again, when he got here, and assuming when he started to throw, because I'm not really inclined to believe that he started to feel it when he didn't throw any pitches. You know what I mean? But he literally said word for word, not prior to camp. That's what he said. And then he also went on to say nothing really got any better. It didn't get necessarily worse either. It kind of plateaued. The worst part is it just never got any better. That's what he said. So it seems like he was assuming that it was going to get better. And that's why he didn't really say anything. And that's why this news is coming out now. And maybe he tried to go back out there another time or two to give it a go, and it just plateaued. So again, this is not something that it was felt prior to camp. And that's where I think the timeline needs to be established, because again, if we're trying to say that this happened before camp, that's a slippery slope to go down, when the factual information, maybe he's just saying that for the cameras. But again, I'm inclined to believe these players when they say something like that. And I just don't think that there's any evidence out there that we could factually say that this was before spring training started. So again, I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point anyways, but I
Yeah.
need to prove a point there.
Well, what do you think about Brazaban? Because I know we both liked the trade when it happened last year. We know the wild streak that he has, but he is a guy that throws hard, has a lot of good pitches. He has a heavy ball. It's hard, when he's in the strike zone or near the strike zone, he's very hard to hit. But his issue is walking guys. He can lose the strike zone, and then he falls into a big problem. What do you think? Do you think Brazaban could be an option if they do go possibly to Buto, stretching him out a little bit, even though they already planned Buto to be in the rotation? I mean the bullpen, excuse me.
Yeah, I like Brazaban. I like Brazaban a lot. I've said that numerous
Yeah,
times. I know that his season last year was 9 day different in a Marlins uniform versus a Mets uniform. His stuff is nasty. He just couldn't figure it out in the second half of the New York Mets, unfortunately. Um, but he looked good today. That's the good news. And his inning pitch, 2 strikeouts, no walks. That's the big issue with Brazaban, is that his walks are are a problem. Go to his Savant page. Great metrics on the movement, on the velo, but just you know zero ability to command those pitches, and that's what haunted him last season. So he's got two options, minor league options remaining. So I'm kind of curious if the Mets go more down the route of like a guy like Sean Reed Foley, so they don't DFA him and lose out on him to another team, right? And he doesn't ever make his way back to Syracuse AAA, rather than going the Brazaban route. But if they went straight to Brazaban, then I'm fine with it, honestly, because I like the stuff. And you can always send him back down. With the two minor league options, there's no hesitancy at that point for the Mets to go ahead and send him down. So I like him a lot. And I think that today he put on a good showing. I'm going to be watching him all spring training long. And this fight for this last bullpen spot, should the Mets change course here and put Buto back into the rotation, I'm not saying that they're going to do it 100%. I'm saying that if they're selling us on the internal route, that it would make sense to do that, because he can provide you really good innings. And who was the first guy really in this rotation to start off by going deeper into ball games, right? Earlier on when he, came into the rotation, it was Jose Buto. He was going 5 2/3, 6 innings pitch, 6 1/3. So I think that would be the best course of action, and then let the other guys fight for his bullpen spot for the time being with Brazaban, Sean Reed Foley. I don't want to see Danny Young, to be honest with you, and I think we saw why yesterday when he appeared in spring training, giving up a couple of runs. I mean, he did okay filling in for Brooks Raley, but he didn't really impress me all that much. Although his numbers against lefties are pretty good. It's just that the three batter minimum really hurts guys like him, the lefty specialist in today's ball game. But I'm fine with it. I think that the bullpen being such a strong suit, there's a lot more manipulation you can do with the bullpen. Do you hate to have to do it? Yeah, you do. But if this is an emergency situation, which we're both saying it really is in the rotation, if they're going internal, you manipulate the bullpen by moving Buto over and you figure out his spot in that bullpen, because I think that the bullpen internal options, especially in the front end, because you still got guys like Stanek, Minter, Diaz, Reed Garrett, right, in the back end, to backfill the front end is a lot easier than going out to find another rotation arm just, off the cuff. So I don't know. That's how I would play it if they're really convinced and set on not pursuing a guy like Jose Quintana.
Yeah, I would be okay with that. If they have to put Buto in there,
And
because
by the way, Buto for long relief, this is what I'm saying. You have multiple guys that can provide you multiple innings. Like multiple, Griffin Cannon can do that. Max Kranick, who we even talked about, can do that. So he does not have to stay in that long relief role. He has proven to be versatile. And just because I proved Joel wrong, I mean, he's getting a little feisty in the chat, but that's all right.
yeah. Again, and we don't know if Minter's going to be ready for opening day either. They also said that, so that can be another thing. If Minter's not ready to go, so let's say the first 2 weeks of the season, that's another man down that's not ready to go. So again, when you sign guys with injury history, what do you think? There's a pretty good chance they might get hurt. I'm not saying that had anything to do with Sean Manaea at all. I'm going to take Manaea at his word that he didn't feel it until he came into spring. I'm not going to say otherwise. I don't think that's fair to him. Again, he could be just saying that for the cameras, but I don't think so. I don't think he would throw one pitch if he came in to spring feeling it. I think he would have said something right away so we can get treatment right away. Right? He can't, he was there like a week before pitchers and catchers. Like if he felt something, I think he would have said something just to get a little bit of, testing, therapy or whatever he needed right away instead of waiting a week or two. But again, we can't change anything now. But when it comes to the game today, because we can actually talk about the game a little bit.
There's a game to talk about.
Yeah,
there is a game to talk about.
Nothing special. Pete Alonso had a good day. Azakar had a good day. Again, nothing special. Again, we talked about Tidwell. Has good stuff. Not ready yet. You can tell, right? He has really good stuff. He just hasn't put it all together yet. 2 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs, 1 strikeout, 1 walk, and he also gave up a home run. But Pete Alonso looked good. Guess what Pete Alonso did? Drove the ball to right center field to get that double. That was nice. That's what I want to see from Pete Alonso more, right? The sexy thing is home runs. We all understand that. But Pete Alonso, when he is at his best, is driving the ball to right center field. We talked about this all of last year until the cows come home. It was sickening that he became basically a pull hitter. And that was the biggest issue. He was striking out more. The average was down. Uh, he wasn't taking a lot of pitches that, he was swinging that crap all over the place. He needs to start honing it in a little bit when it comes to what he needs to narrow in on when it comes to pitchers. He needs to take that fastball on the outside corner that he took a lot last year. He was taking fastballs right on the outside corner, fastballs right down the middle, and just looking at them. When go back a couple of years ago, he was driving that ball to right center field. If it wasn't over the wall, he was driving it in the gap. That's what he needs to do. That was when I saw that. It wasn't a powerful swing. All he had to do, he's strong enough to flick the bat, and that ball splits the gap. And that's exactly what Pete Alonso has to do. Again, it is spring training, but it's nice to see what he's working on. You can tell, because if you look at that swing, he wasn't looking to pull that ball on the outside corner. He was trying to take that the other way. And that's what I need the Pete Alonso to do more. Again, the home runs are sexy. The home runs are nice. But you need to have your pitch. You have to have your location to drive the ball out of the ballpark. I think if Pete Alonso can do what he needs to do with pitches that he might not get, a great part of the wood on the ball, at least he can, take that ball the other way. If not hitting the ball in the gap, take that ball, get a single. I think he can be better in that way, and it's nice to see him doing that in spring. He did it the other day too in the game as well. When he had a hit, he looked pretty good as well. So nice performance by Pete Alonso. Good to see him trying to go the other way. That's always a good sign for Pete Alonso, Chris.
Sorry, I'm typing in the chat here. Yeah, listen, the opposite field way, that's the key to Pete Alonso's success. Listen, how many times have we been pleading for Pete Alonso back in 2024 to just drive that pitch the other way? That is vintage Pete Alonso. When he's come up into this league, right? Even the opposite field power, when he is on top of his game, he's driving that pitch to right center field. I know that sometimes it's not optimal for the home run power, and everyone gets bogged down by the pull side being the best chance to put the ball out of the ballpark. Guys like Juan Soto, Mark Vientos, Pete Alonso, you don't have to worry about that. And so now I'm very curious, right? When we talk about this 1 through 3, Lindor, Soto, and Alonso, we've been having this back and forth all pretty much, the last couple of days especially, assessing that Astros versus Mets first spring training game. This, and we talked about this, right? Because you said, should there be trust in Pete Alonso to get the job done, whether it's in the 3 spot or the 4 spot? And I've been on record stating that I do trust Pete Alonso, and I think that there's no choice for the Mets but to trust in Pete Alonso to revert back to form, especially when you have the personnel in the top 5 being what it is. And I think that if you get this version right here of Pete Alonso not trying to do too much, he's going to put the ball over the fence no matter what. We know that. It's going to come naturally. That's who he is. But if he gets those outside pitches, whether it's on a fastball that's well located or whether it's on a breaking ball on the outer part of the plate, if he does this, because that was a rope to right center field. I watched the replay, especially on SNY. All the social media pages were tweeting it out. This is going to be fantastic news. And this is what's going to help the lack of depth or the lack of, talent in the rotation. Consistently seeing something like that with Juan Soto getting on base and Pete Alonso doing the job. So I'm sure we're going to be talking about Pete Alonso the same amount, if not more, than what we did in 2024, because there was a whole entire discussion. But if we're talking about him less, then that means he must be doing something right? I guess that could be the case. I love
and you know what? Once again, the lineup, the top 3, 2 games out of 4 is the lineup I think you're going to see early on. And again, with Vientos in the lineup today, I was curious. When I saw it, I'm like, oh, top 4. That's kind of what I said. And I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just saying, I think this is what it's going to be for at least the first couple of weeks of the season. Only because, again, I like what I've seen from Pete Alonso so far in the spring. It's only a couple of games, but he has been driving the ball to right field, which is very important for him to be very successful and have a really good year. I just feel like with Juan Soto in front of him and Vientos behind him, he's going to see more pitches. I truly believe that. And again, it's up to him to not roll over on an outside pitch and ground it to the shortstop for a double play, right? It's up to him to drive that ball on the outside corner of the right field, which he saw today. That's where I could see him being very successful in the 3 spot. Again, I think the confidence level is not there yet. I truly believe that. You can't have a whole season of having terrible situations where you were just terrible at the plate in important moments during the season, and your manager forget about that. We could, just like everybody wasn't going to give him a long-term deal when he hit one big home run in Milwaukee. Like, teams weren't going to say, oh my God, look at that home run. Let me give you a 7-year deal. Same concept. There wasn't a lot of confidence last year for a lot of Met fans and probably the manager, where he might have said the right things to the media, but deep down he knew it was an issue last year with Alonso. I think he can change. I truly believe that if he can do that opposite field hitting, I think he's a different hitter all of a sudden. And then you can always talk about, you can manipulate. Again, Alonso and Vientos are right-handers, so it's not about matchups. But again, if Alonso's successful in the first couple of weeks of this lineup, you're not going to move him. Same thing with Lindor. You're not moving a guy who was an MVP candidate last year out of the leadoff spot. Even some might think, hey, why don't you move him? Once, let Nimmo lead off or something like that to stretch out the lineup a little bit more. Sure. But I just feel like if things are going well, you're not going to move this lineup around. And I think you're going to give Alonso the opportunity to have somebody behind him that pitchers are afraid of. Pitchers are afraid of Mark Vientos at this moment, right? It's crazy to think after one season, but the guy seemed like he has, ice in his veins. It didn't affect him the big moments, right? We seen the big moments affect Pete Alonso until Pete Alonso can actually show that he is 2022 Pete Alonso, 2019 Pete Alonso, where he was batting 260 and still hitting those 40 bombs, but he was a better hitter, right? Limit those strikeouts. Don't try to do too much with balls on the outside corner. Take the base hit, take the double. A home run is not the end all be all. I think right now with this lineup, I like the way it is in the top 4. Again, I see he's trying to work with the number 5 spot. He had Alvarez behind Vientos and McNeil today behind Vientos. I think the end all, when Nimmo starts to get games in, and we'll talk about Nimmo in a second, as there was information today that Nimmo might be getting some starts around the first to second week in March, starting to play spring training games. So they're slowly bringing him back. I think you're going to see Nimmo batting 5th, Chris. What do you think about that?
You talking about Nimmo batting 5th?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I think so. Well, yeah, because I mean, regardless of who hits 2, that's been our back and forth debate of who hits 2. You saying Soto, I'm saying Vientos, and whoever ends up being right. I honestly think at this point, in that sense, and then if there's an adjustment that needs to be made mid-season, Mendoza will do it. But I think that from everything that we've been hearing, especially from Mendoza himself, Soto's going to be batting 2, so we're going to see that. But I think that, yeah, at that point, Vientos has to either be the 3 or 4 hitter at that point with Nimmo batting 5. So I'm really curious to see Nimmo defensively. I'm not really. I know that he produced a pretty subpar season offensively for his standards. I think that's going to turn around. And I think that he's going to come back to form, just like I think Pete Alonso is going to do the same thing. But I'm curious to see how the foot is feeling, right? That is the big thing for me. If it's fully healed, is he moving around well, or are the Mets going to have issues there in terms of being stuck deciding whether they need to feel like they need to DH him? Because at this point, if you've got Winker and Marte on this team, that's a logjam automatically already at DH. So there's not really much you can do there. But at that point, you're still going to need to probably force Nimmo at bats, even if you need to get him off of his feet. So I think the health of Nimmo with his foot and him being able to go out there almost every day defensively is the biggest thing that I'm watching out for. And then shifting focus as well, just to bring this name in here that we see on our screen, Jeff McNeil. What is your assessment of Jeff McNeil? I mean, he's taken a couple of offers. I know it's way too early to be, hitting any sort of, I mean, panic button. We talk about panic in this rotation. I'm still personally, objectively not panicked. I know you are a little bit. I think the Mets can hold and stick it out in the first half. I know that's not what everyone wants to hear, but I think that they can do it. But in terms of Jeff McNeil, knowing that like I was wanting to see him come out of the gate swinging and finding success. I know that it's going to come, right? And I think that he's going to win this job. I think that we both think he's going to win this job over a guy like Luis Angel Acuna. For better or for worse, we'll see. But what do you see out of Jeff McNeil early on to spring training so far?
I see him trying to hit home runs, and that's already a problem. Like he changed his bat, right? They had a conversation with him right before spring training started. The game started, and he was talking about he's changing his bat. Now he has the knob because he wants to get more power in his swing, in his bat. And he felt like with the bat he had, with the knobless bat and choking up, he wasn't getting that full lift on the ball. He wasn't getting the bat in the zone more. Does Jeff McNeil learn? And this is the problem where I think Jeff McNeil is too stubborn and he doesn't listen to his coaches, in my opinion. I truly believe they're not telling Jeff McNeil to hit home runs, right? His best asset is getting on base and average, right? I just, and if the coaches are telling him to hit for power, they need to be fired, right? You're not telling Juan Soto what to do. You're probably not telling Lindor what to do. Probably even Vientos at this point, and probably not even Alonso. But guys like Jeff McNeil, who their successful seasons were what 10 home runs, batting 320, batting 330. That's the best Jeff McNeil. Why are they trying to allow him to do this? Is beyond me, right? You're holding on for dear life to be on this team. You were successful as an average hitter, as a high average guy, working counts, taking the walks, getting on base. That was why you were a leadoff guy. That was why you were batting second in this lineup. Now you're almost on the verge of not making this team. Why, I don't understand the philosophy here with Jeff McNeil. I don't know if he's just being stubborn and he's not listening to the coaches, but to change your bat, to change your philosophy of hitting again, and going back to where you struggled the most in trying to hit home runs. If the coaches are not telling him this, then that's a problem because Jeff McNeil is not successful hitting home runs. Like, what do you? If you can jump from 10 to 30 home runs, then we can have a conversation. But when you jump to 10 to 15 home runs, that's not going to make a dent in this lineup. It's really not. Now we can have 430 home run guys in this lineup and possibly 25 home run guys. Like Jeff McNeil, you're not hitting 20 home runs. I'm sorry to tell you. You're just not. Right? And I'd rather have a 290 hitter in Jeff McNeil with 10 home runs than a 210 hitter, 10-15 hitter with maybe 15, 16 home runs. You are basically Jose Siri at this point. That's a problem. Like, I don't want to see Jeff McNeil trying to hit home runs, right? If you lean into one and Jack went over the fence, fine, that happens. But trying to be something you're not and you never were in your career, and your most successful seasons was high average, high on base, working counts, and you're going away from that, why are you even here? You're not helping his team. You know, he's not going to be a 25 home run guy. Like, we know this. He's tried this home runs philosophy before. It hasn't worked for 2 years now. I don't understand it anymore. I think Jeff McNeil is slowly losing his job. Unless Luis Angel Acuna is just not good during spring, they'll give Jeff McNeil the job. But I just don't feel like Jeff McNeil is doing what he needs to do to be a good player at this point for this lineup.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're always going to have these discussions surrounding Jeff McNeil until he finally is able to figure it out. But finally is probably going to be too late because, again, I'm going to stick to this and that he's going to get the nod for the first month and a half. And again, knowing that we need this lineup to come through for this starting rotation, presumably in the outlook of the first month, month and a half, 2 months, etc., is that we need this lineup to be clicking on all cylinders. And I honestly think the Mets, they showed this, Mendoza and Stearns both showed this last year. And I think this year is going to be no different. Pulling the plug real quick on something that doesn't work. And I think that it doesn't quite matter at this point. Yeah, the veteran status and the contract might, I guess, decide the starting job, which sucks to say, but at some points, let me rephrase that, or let me re-ask this question. If do you think with this regime, right, Mendoza, Stearns, etc., if Luis Angel Acuna actually outperforms Jeff McNeil in spring training with the bat, let alone defensively, do you think that he has a real shot at the opening day starting job? Or do you think that no matter what happens, they can say that to the media and they're still going to roll with Jeff McNeil? Because I think it's going to be Jeff McNeil no matter what.
I still think it's going to be Jeff McNeil, unfortunately, regardless of his spring. Like Acuna has to really like go nuts for a month, and McNeil's got to look terrible for that to even have a conversation of Acuna starting. And this is why I told Met fans, not to get all hyped up with these damn prospects, and why using them as assets to bring in better players makes more sense because they're going to use these guys. If you haven't learned anything, they're sticking with their veterans, right? Vientos, from Beatty to Vientos was prospect to prospect, right? That had nothing to do with a veteran. Stearns is going to go with the veteran, right? He likes his farm system. He likes his prospects. But if he likes him so much, why aren't they here, right? That's the other thing, right? To not trade prospects, to say how great you love your farm system, right? How many are actually going to make this team? Probably none that we're talking about right now. The Brandon Sproats, the Luis Angel Acuñas, the Jet Williams, the Tidwells. Probably not. And that's the
Maybe
issue.
gonna make it.
Yeah, and that's why the plan makes no sense because of the fact that the Jeff McNeil situation is looking not too good. It's only a couple of games. We're not going to go crazy. But if McNeil is still on this trend here, and Luis Angel Acuna is, let's say, good, average, and solid, looks okay, he's not going to get the nod. You know why? Because they probably still don't trust him, giving him the starting job. So here we are again, right? What do you need? You need rotation. You need help at this moment. If you're going to give Jeff McNeil the job and you're not willing to give these young kids that you, every time you talk to the media, you're talking how much you love these guys and you're not giving them a chance and be a starter. Because again, we all forget Luis Angel Acuna was here, not because he was lighting it up in AAA. It was because we had an injury to Lindor and Jose Iglesias was kind of slowing down a little bit at the end of the year. That's why Acuna was here, not because he was lighting it up. We all forget that. I just don't understand the logic at this point.
Well, in a perfect world, I mean, we've talked about this numerous of times, and I've mentioned this, trying to find a trade partner for Jeff McNeil this past offseason, and even the offseason before that, we were having those kind of discussions surrounding Jeff McNeil. They were starting at that point because it was a little bit premature at that point, I think. But at this point, I mean, he's going to get this last chance now that he's on the roster. I do think at the end of the day, if the Mets found a trade partner that made sense and were willing to give up something that they were looking for Jeff McNeil, they would have taken it, but they just simply couldn't find a team that wanted him back enough to give up anything of value. Same thing with Starling Marte. And so now we are faced to, with this logjam, both at DH and second base, before you can even think about having Luis Angel Acuna there. And to be honest, like, the best world scenario would have been to let go of a guy like Jeff McNeil. Because I objectively, I try to give players the benefit of the doubt, but I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I hope to be wrong. I don't think Jeff McNeil, any previous version of himself, is coming back. I don't think so. I have not seen anything, maybe outside of like a couple of weeks span in the second half last season, that would tell me otherwise. So, there's this whole discussion about Jeff McNeil. Did the shift hurt him, or the shift ban, did that hurt him? Is it something else with Jeff McNeil? Is he too stubborn? Is it mental? Is it his swing? It doesn't really matter what it is. He hasn't been getting the job done. And at this point, his saving grace, like you just said, is that he's a veteran. And when is it going to be time? Come, opening day, how long does he really get on this team before the Mets are going to pull the plug on that quote unquote experiment and just move elsewhere? I think it's going to be a very short leash that they're going to have for that situation. But at this point, now we're talking about this roster being more geared and favored towards Brett Beatty. I think that we can objectively
Yep.
state that with what we've seen in spring training so far. I mean, are we convinced with Brett Beatty? Probably not. But at this point, there's a real world scenario where Jeff McNeil's your second baseman. You'll have Lindor up the middle. Brett Beatty will be your last, bench spot candidate, and then Luis Angel Acuna will go down AAA. Is that the perfect world scenario of what I see for this team come opening day? No, but that there has to be some sort of plan for Brett Beatty beyond just putting him back down to AAA, because again, the Mets have also handcuffed themselves in terms of diminishing his value. Not that they had any other choice, right? Because hindsight's always 2020, and he kind of did it to the Mets, whereas it's not vice versa. But there's still, with this team, I like so much the roster with the bullpen, with the lineup, but there's certain areas, even outside of the rotation, that I'm kind of just wondering, like, what really is the way forward? With second base, what's the way forward? Everybody knows, or should know, with the way that I talk about this team, I never liked the platoon DH. I don't like that at all. You know what I mean? And they did it last year. Okay, whatever. I didn't really want that to be the case for 2025, but they're doing it again. So we'll see if that works out in their favor. So I don't know. There's just a couple of positional situations here and there that I'm like, what's really going to happen come opening day and beyond? Should there need to be adjustments? But we'll see, man. I think everything is fluid at this point, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, the big news of the day: Sean Manaea, right oblique strain, uh, will be shut down for a couple of weeks. Uh, won't be making the open day start. Won't be making open day roster. They'll probably put him on the IL to have a roster spot available. We'll see how they fill these roster spots if they go externally to add in Quintana, Sternbull or somebody else, or they just go the internal route with the guys we mentioned 500 times that we're not very excited about. So, unfortunately for us guys, yeah, Chris, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, just get Quintana, man. Just get Quintana, please. At this point, just do it.
So we're 4 games into spring training, and we have 3 injuries because you want to throw Magical in there, who's going to be our utility guy. Down 2 starting pitchers and a utility guy, and it's only 4 games into spring training and 2 days of spring training, basically. So, with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to Mets Post Game right here on the channels. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channels, and make sure, guys, you tune into the 6:30 stream, Mets Spring Training Report that I'm doing tonight. Tune in 6:30 tonight, and we'll be talking about mostly the same stuff and more about Sean Manaea and what are the other chances of them going externally other than internally with the Sean Manaea injury. So, guys, final thoughts, Chris, and let's go Mets, guys.
Yeah, there's nothing really else to say. I mean, what the Mets are faced with, it is what it is at this point. The depth is getting thinner and thinner. I think that the external play here is the best option if you don't want to touch the bullpen.
Yeah.
But there should be some real conversation surrounding Jose Buto and if that transition back into the rotation makes sense. Again, am I expecting that to happen? No, but just keeping that in the back of everybody's minds that is a solution if the Mets are preaching this internal route is really something that I'm going to continue to stress because I've been stating that for quite some time now. So again, we'll see what happens. Hopefully, this is the last injury that we have to talk about, right? We've got Montas, Madrigal. By the way, we didn't even talk about Nick Madrigal. He's got a fractured shoulder.
Yeah, he's
So
done.
he's done. He's done. I mean, it's not just a dislocated shoulder, it's fractured now. So that's the latest news on Nick Madrigal. And now Sean Manaea. It's not the situation that anybody wants to go into opening day facing. There's a long way in between now and opening day. So there's stuff that can happen with the Mets front office in terms of making some moves happen. And we'll keep you all posted on that. But, for me, I'm still going to be assessing all those fringe guys that we talked about on the channel. We're still going to be assessing the second base situation. Mendoza did say that Luis Angel Acuna is going to have a big impact on this team in 2025. I'm curious to see when, right? That's going to happen. That's really the major question at this point, but still some things to look forward to. Bullpen guys, Pete Alonso having himself a nice little hit today, opposite field, couple RBIs. Juan Soto, getting a base hit, I believe an infield hit as well. At this point, a lot to look forward to on the offense. And there's going to be a struggle in the rotation. There's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a dogfight in terms of the first half, getting to that half, and I guess just winning ball games and staying afloat. But I think that the rest of this roster is set up to mitigate any lapses in the rotation, and we will see that at the end of the day. Is that, I guess wishful thinking? We'll see, but I'm going to stick to it. But outside of that, I appreciate you all tuning in again. Another Mets post-game show. Tune into all the latest content. Rob and I both got videos out there earlier today breaking down the Manaea news, and also tune into Rob's stream later today. I might have a video coming later tonight. We'll see, to be determined, but I appreciate everybody. Have a nice rest of your day. And, again, let's go Mets. We can just hope for the best at this point from now until opening day.
So disappointed. All right, guys. Have a good night, guys. I'll see you at 6:30. Let's go Mets, and have a good night, guys.
See ya.
In the dead of night, full of echo. Concrete jungle, dreams bust to grow. Mets in the air, chase glory, no fear. Broken backs, but hearts steer clear. OMG, the chaos, what a scene. Streets buzzing like a machine. Grimace from the shadows, chills on my spine. Past haunts, the future shine.